Good morning, everyone. In the past few weeks, we have been discussing about the tragedy of the commons and trying to understand why human behavior leads to environmental problems. We also started investigating the concept of the carbon footprint and how the amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere is a result of the activities of a particular individual. In this lecture, however, we will do something different from the previous lectures. We will analyze the persuasiveness of the two articles you were assigned to read for homework. First, I will provide an overview of what makes an article persuasive. And second, I will discuss the similarities between the two articles and how they supported their respective arguments. And lastly, I will explain the differences between the two articles and why one is more persuasive than the other. Ready? Let's begin. So, what makes an article persuasive? First, you need to consider the argument that the author is making. Is the argument clear? Can you easily identify the argument within the text? Without a clear argument, the reader is going to have difficulty in following the points that will be used to support that argument. On the other hand, if the argument is clear from the beginning, it will be easier for the reader to follow the author's points, which makes the argument of an article more persuasive. Therefore, the supporting points of the argument also need to be clear and logical. When I say logical, the supporting points need to be ordered properly. In other words, the structure of the article and the argument itself need to be effective. In contrast, if the supporting points are disorganized, it will be difficult to follow the author's reasoning. And lastly, the tone of the article, mainly through word choice, need to be selected carefully in order to get the attention of the reader. If the tone is serious, then the reader is going to care more about what the author is saying. Whereas if the tone is light-hearted, in other words, not as serious, then the reader is not going to care as much. In brief, word choice and content are extremely important. Now, let's take a look at the similarities between the two articles. At first glance, the two readings, one, the 35 easiest ways to reduce your carbon footprint by Renee Choi, and two, there's one simple thing you should do if you really want to reduce your carbon footprint by Signe Dean. Both articles appear to tackle the same issue of an individual's carbon footprint with a similar goal: to give easy or simple advice on how to reduce carbon footprints. Since the articles are both published within 6 months of each other in 2018, and because of similar points of interest within the shared carbon footprint content that overlaps, the articles share more similarities in content than differences. Both Dean and Choi use cutting out meat as a recommendation, for example, and both cite estimates of how much an individual can reduce their carbon footprint by doing so. Although the number used in the specific articles vary due to Choi including dairy in her estimates, the statistics are similar enough to support each article's findings. Another similar piece of advice in both articles is to avoid air travel. Overall, the articles share many similar points to the readers, yet an important contrast is clearly revealed in the organization and style of each essay. The contrast in organization, in fact, makes Dean's article more persuasive. Despite the seriousness of the topic, Choi's organizational structure sets a light-hearted tone with a long list of options for the reader. Although she, like Dean, uses research, her overall tone and structure implies that readers can pick and choose from a wide range of options and still be making significant steps towards reducing individual carbon footprints. In Choi's list, there's no ranking of what is most significant in reducing carbon footprint, implying that as long as the reader chooses something to reduce, he or she can make a difference with carbon emissions. This light-hearted tone undermines her argument. In contrast, Dean clearly states the necessity of sacrifice in order to make an impact on carbon emissions. As Dean asserts, truly reducing carbon footprint forces difficult decisions, like having less children or making the significant lifestyle change of not using a car in your daily life, nor an airplane for travel. Dean's argument is also ordered much more logically than Choi's long list. Dean first provides a graph and clearly cites her source, mainly researchers from Sweden and Canada, that obviously shows the latest statistics to support the argument. She next summarizes the chart by highlighting the 4 most significant points: no car, no air travel, only a plant-based diet, and fewer children, thus highlighting from early on in her article that carbon reduction takes sacrifice. Overall, the seriousness of the article make it a lot more persuasive. For these reasons, Dean's article is much more believable and therefore persuasive. If it were easy for an individual to reduce his or her carbon footprint, we would be much closer to achieving our goals to limit future global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. Choi's article allows us to avoid this difficult truth, that we are facing difficult decisions that will include major lifestyle changes. Dean's article, on the other hand, makes a point to emphasize the fundamental difficulty we are facing. Are we going to check off 5 or 6 easy points from Choi's list and tell ourselves we are doing enough? Or will we, as the masses, finally listen to the research and writers like Dean and face the reality of global warming? In conclusion, it should have become obvious that these articles are a stark contrast in organization and philosophical approach, despite their basic similarity of the topic. Furthermore, Dean's well-organized, transparent argument is much more persuasive than Choi's long list of suggestions for reducing carbon footprint. Analyzing both articles for organization and style will make their differences, and the reason for Dean's overall effectiveness very clear. Thank you for listening, and I hope this lecture has helped understand how differences in content of an article can affect persuasiveness.